We are back and we are continuing on with some more heuristics that are leading to some of our suboptimal decisions, we call that. Nice way of saying bad decisions. Today we're going to be talking about anchoring and adjustment. Anchoring and adjustment says we anchor to an arbitrary number. So that's the key on this, the arbitrary part, is that we throw out the arbitrary number and we anchor to that and we fail to adjust to the appropriate estimate. I'll give you an example here. S&P 500, at the end of this year, do you believe the S&P 500 in the stock market will close above or below 2,000? So the S&P 500, more or less than 2,000. So you can make your decision. And then my follow-up question is, what do you think the S&P 500 is going to close at? And so you can say it closes above and then make your estimate. And then I'll give another group, the S&P 500 closed at 8,000, above and below. So basically I'm throwing out an arbitrary number here because, by the way, as I'm recording this today, S&P 500 is around 5,500 points. And nevertheless, what we're doing is we're just throwing out a number arbitrarily, and then people anchor to it. So what we tend to see here is people will say, well, clearly it's going to be greater than 2,000, but it'll probably be around 4,000 on average. Some people kind of get it. Some people move their average up a little bit. 8,000, they move it down, maybe even down to like 6,000. But you can see here the anchor holds and people fail to adjust to the actual estimate. And so anchoring adjustment, we see that in stocks. Another example here is if I put the question 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 times 6 times 7 times 8 times 9 times 10. And I say, okay, what do you think your estimate of this is? And people will give their estimate. And then I'll ask another group here, 9 times 10 times 8 times 7, and go down the list. And because people obviously read left to right, the first estimates here, by the time they get halfway through, 2, 6, 24 times 5 equals 24 times 5, 110. And so they're at 110 by the time they get halfway through. Even by doing one step here, they're at 90 times 8. They're at 200 or 720. 720 times 7, they're already at almost 5,000 by the time they get through 4. So obviously their estimates are going to be higher just by the anchors that we're setting here early on. So anchoring and adjustment is the first heuristic. Next, we're going to talk about wine and jelly. So wine, if you are over the legal age to drink. Jellies, if you are under the legal age to drink. But we've got 2 treatments, and we're all at a store, and we have treatment 1 that has 3 to 4 samples. And then we have treatment number 2, which has 30 to 40 samples. So let's talk about jellies here. And imagine you're at the store, you're tasting some samples, and then you have treatment 1, and then another scenario where you have jellies and you have 30 to 40 samples. And so I want you to think from 2 different perspectives. First, what do you think was more interesting? Which one would you think would be more interesting to you or more fun to explore? interesting or fun? So I know that 30 to 40 samples, especially if we're talking wine, sounds like a lot of fun. And so obviously the more samples you have, the more fun, the more interesting it's going to be for people just to go around and taste different tastes of jellies. So who knew you could have that many tastes? Wine, to go down the list and see how many tastes you can have with wine. So obviously treatment number 2 is going to be more fun. Which one led to more buying decisions? So you would think here 30 to 40 samples, theoretically that is 10 times more likely to have people buy something. That's 10 more times chances for somebody to really like something and to be drawn towards it. But the more buying sample actually came from treatment number 1. When the list was down to 3 to 4 samples, which one do you like? Take that one. Would you like to buy it? Sure, yes. So what happened here? We were having so much fun, 30 to 40 samples. But why didn't we have any buying power? Or why didn't we make purchases based off of these samples? Well, this is called information overload. Information overload, otherwise known as the information paradox. Overload or paradox. And we were explaining here it's the paradox because in theory, we should have 10 times more buying from 10 times more samples than the other treatment. But because we get overloaded with our options, we freeze and we don't do anything. Have you ever heard of analysis paralysis? That's sometimes what happens. We get overwhelmed with the different options and we get paralyzed and we walk away. We don't do anything. So yes, with wine or jellies, this could be the case in our retirement savings or our investment accounts. We have thousands of opportunities to invest in different mutual funds and ETFs, and we have REITs, real estate investment trusts, we have bonds, all of these different options out there. And what do we do with that information? Well, if you're like most people, we freeze and we don't know what to do, and we keep our money in our checking account, which isn't earning us anything, even when we can get 5% in a money market. So once again, we have information overload in our investment accounts. And we're going to talk later about retirement accounts and how we need to build our retirement offerings if we're in that position to help people, because we're going to reach a certain point where people become overwhelmed and they just won't start the first process or the first step of actually contributing to the account. They'll get paralyzed there. We'll talk more about that later, but that is the information paradox. We're going to leave it at that, and I will see you on the next video. Thanks.